The automatic doors of Crestfield Veterans Hospital slid open with a familiar hiss as Eleanor James, 83 years old and hunched with age, pushed her mop across the tiled lobby floor. Her shoulders ached, and her knees groaned with every step, but she never complained. She had a job to do, and in her eyes, it mattered, even if no one noticed her anymore. The young nurses hurried by, their shoes squeaking as they carried trays of medicine and clipboards. Doctors barked out instructions. Visitors clutched bouquets and balloons, rushing to see loved ones. And Eleanor? She was just the cleaning lady. People dodged around her mop bucket like it was an inconvenience. No one asked her name. No one looked into her eyes. Except for room 219. Every morning, Eleanor paused outside that room. Inside lay Corporal Matty Rayburn, a 28-year-old Army medic who had lost both legs to an IED in Kandahar. Most days, he stared blankly out the window, refusing therapy and speaking only in one-word replies. But Eleanor didn't mind. "Good morning, Matty," she'd say softly, even if he didn't respond. She'd leave a folded paper crane on his windowsill and mop quietly. Origami had been her late husband Walter's passion, and folding them made her feel close to him again. She thought maybe, just maybe, they might bring Matty a little peace too. Eleanor had once had her moment in the light. A long time ago. A decorated Army nurse during the Vietnam War. Bronze Star. Purple Heart. But those medals sat in a dusty box in her one-bedroom apartment. People forget. History moves on. And Eleanor had let it. She preferred it that way. Until the day everything changed. It was a Thursday afternoon, hot and stifling. The hospital's air conditioning sputtered under the August heat. Eleanor moved from room to room, her mop leaving tiny streaks behind. In the break room, someone had left coffee rings on the table again. She wiped them with practiced care. As she returned to the hallway, she overheard two nurses chatting. "He's coming today." "Who?" "General Hawkins. The 4-star. Pentagon's golden boy. Some kind of morale tour." Eleanor paused, interest flickering only briefly. Big Brass visited now and then. They shook hands, posed for photos, and left. But this time would be different. That afternoon, the hospital stood straighter. Uniforms were neater. The walls even seemed shinier. Staff lined the lobby as the elevator dinged and out stepped General Richard Hawkins in full dress blues, ribbons covering his chest like a war-painted badge of honor. He was tall, commanding, with the posture of a man who had seen fire and come out steel. Cameras clicked. Staff applauded. A young lieutenant scurried to his side, briefing him on names and wards. Eleanor watched from a distance, standing near her janitor's cart. She smoothed her gray curls under her cap and looked down at her hands, wrinkled, veined, forgotten. Just as she turned to mop the east wing, she heard a sharp voice echo. "Hold on. Is that?" The general's voice cut through the chatter. People stopped. Heads turned. General Hawkins was staring straight at her. "Ma'am," he said, stepping forward. Eleanor blinked, surprised. "Yes, sir." He took 2 deliberate steps, then 3. The room fell silent. He stood before her, eyes locking onto hers, not with pity, but reverence. And then, slowly, he raised his hand in salute. A crisp, dignified, military salute. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Nurses exchanged confused looks. Even the camera crew paused. "I don't believe it," Hawkins said, his voice thick with emotion. "Lieutenant Eleanor James. Vietnam. 5th Evac Hospital. You saved my father's life." Eleanor's mouth parted. She looked closer, and suddenly, she saw it. The chin. The eyes. He looked just like Captain Hawkins. Her patient in 1971, bleeding from the chest, whispering about his son back home. "You were just a boy," she whispered. "I was. But I've known your name my entire life," Hawkins said. "My father told me about you before he passed. He called you, the angel with the bullet wound." Everyone stared. Eleanor began, but her voice caught. The general turned to the crowd. "This woman is a hero. Her hands once held the lives of my father and dozens of others. She's not just the janitor. She's a warrior." He turned back and gently lowered his salute. "May I?" Without waiting for permission, he reached out and embraced her. The room erupted in applause. The news spread like wildfire. Videos of the moment flooded social media. "Four-star general salutes janitor who saved his father's life," was the headline everywhere. Reporters swarmed the hospital. Local stations ran retrospectives on Eleanor's wartime service. Her story surfaced. How she served 3 combat tours, treated hundreds under fire, stitched wounds in jungle mud with trembling hands. How she was wounded in a helicopter evacuation and refused to be medevaced until her patients were safe. And how, after the war, no one called her back. No job offers. No parades. Just silence. So she took what she could. Cleaning jobs. Nights alone. Paper cranes for company. Until now. The hospital administration offered Eleanor a new position, veteran care liaison. A job with dignity. A voice in policy. A nameplate on the door. At first, she hesitated. "I'm no one special," she told Maddie during her daily visit. But Maddie, who rarely spoke, looked up for the first time in weeks. "You're the only reason I didn't give up," he said. "You talked to me like I was still human." Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes. "Then I guess I have to keep doing that," she whispered. Months passed. Eleanor no longer mopped floors. Instead, she helped vets navigate paperwork, encouraged therapy, and visited the most withdrawn patients, sharing her own scars. The paper cranes multiplied, now folded by patients and nurses alike. Room 219 no longer felt cold. Maddie began therapy, smiling more often. He even started folding cranes of his own, sometimes in red, white, and blue. General Hawkins returned again and again, bringing others from the Pentagon. "Every hospital needs an Eleanor," he'd say. She never got used to the attention. But she accepted it, not for herself, but for all the forgotten warriors like her. On Veterans Day, Eleanor stood on the Capitol steps, invited by the president himself to speak. Cameras flashed. Flags waved. But her voice was soft. "I didn't save lives to be remembered," she said. "I did it because they needed saving. And after the war, I kept doing what I knew, quiet service. Sometimes, the greatest acts aren't on the battlefield. They're in the hallways. The hospital rooms. The paper cranes." She held one up, trembling in her hands. "Every person has a story. Please, don't wait until they're gone to hear it." Eleanor James passed away 3 years later, peacefully in her sleep. Her funeral was attended by hundreds, veterans, generals, janitors, nurses, and strangers. On her casket lay a flag, and inside it, 1,000 folded cranes sent from around the world. And among the mourners stood a man in uniform, now Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army, saluting once more, this time with tears in his eyes. Because he knew. She was never just the janitor. She was the quiet legacy of courage. And she had saved us all.